She Slayers, and welcome to another episode of She Slays the Day podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lauren Brunswick. Today we have kind of a weird setup. I intentionally am like keeping it fresh, doing weird things because that's what my ADHD requires. We are in 260 or 70 some episodes. I'm not really sure. So today we're taking an Instagram live that I did recently, and we're sandwiching it with me alone and my thoughts. So there's a couple reasons. So I did an Instagram live with Dan Ruitenbeek. I think that's how you would pronounce his name. And he is a rep from Shockwave Centers of America. Now, I don't do episodes devoted basically to sponsors. That's just not what I do. So, what I need you to know is I am not a rep for Shockwaves Centers of America. They happen to be the company that I chose how to do Shockwave or to like buy a Shockwave through. He's going to answer some questions, but there are other questions that I've been getting from people that I wanted to make sure we gave really a full rounded experience to you. Okay, so before we jump in to some things, heads up, there are going to be two new She Slays products that are going to be coming in available in the month of July. So pretty damn soon. They're both online courses that you can take at your own speed. So one is called the Growth Lab, and these are foundational marketing essentials. This is coming in at a $297 price point. Okay. So this is really for either Chiro who's gotten started, who just wants to like understand the digital expectations of marketing a chiropractic clinic, the internal expectations and core pillars of marketing a chiropractic clinic, and the external foundational pillars of things. So like it's kind of really broken down into digital, internal, and external marketing. So this is great for somebody just getting into marketing and feeling like they want to understand like the whole picture. This is great for someone who's maybe been in practice a while and doesn't like just kind of needs a little kick in the butt of like, oh yeah, we did market, but I've kind of fallen off and just needs a little oomph. Or somebody who wants to offload their marketing onto a CA and have them go through and understand and really speak at that level. So you don't have to do the training. You can't buy it yet. Okay. So like you can't buy it. But it is going to be coming. So like it's coming very soon. You'll find out. I'm sure I'll announce it on the podcast and on Instagram, but just so you know, that's coming. The second course that is going to become available in the month of July is called the Launchpad, and that is a growth catalyst program for chiropractors who really want to see more families and kind of run that more cash retention family practice. So there's conversations in there about getting out of network with insurance, how to get the whole family under care, how to really think like a CEO. So this is really again ideal for that. It's not like a full on startup. So like we're not going to talk about whether you should file as an S corp or anything like that, but you should. Uh that's a different podcast episode. That's actually going to be coming up. We have a tax person coming up and she talks about S corp. But anyway, so like this is not going to be like helping you find your location and branding. This is like, all right, I started up. I'm in like week one or month one or year one. Now, how do I grow this thing? Like, how do I, like, maybe you've got through your initial momentum of starting up a practice. Like, how do you continue the growth? Or for a chiropractor who's maybe running kind of a clinic that they don't love as much. Maybe it's very insurance focused, it's very pain focused, and they really want to see more kids and families incorporating in scans. They're like, maybe you own a scan and you don't know how to implement it in your clinic. We're going to talk about that. So anyway, so both of those are coming on to the scene in the month of July. The landing page is getting finalized now. So you'll have that. Why did I do these courses? I have found so up until now, there's really only been two ways to work with me. One was through the Multi-Passionate Chiropreneur, which is a very high level course. Typically, These are chiros that have been in practice at least 3 years, and we're having some of those higher level conversations about profit margins and tax strategy and efficiency systems, things like that. And that price point that it's at is just not for everyone, and that's okay. Um, and but then the only other way to really work with me is like on one-on-one coaching that I only open for like 4 people, like every once in a while. So like I did it this summer, it's closed, it's 3 month, and that was at a $2,000 a month price point. And so it was really like, okay, I have a lot of people who are like, yeah, eventually one day I would love to be able to do the multi-passionate chiropreneur. I would love to be able to afford to work one-on-one with you, but like I can't yet. And that I I can't because I'm charging other people this amount. I can't turn around and be like, okay, I'll work with you for $100 an hour or things like that. And so the courses are a great affordable way in which you can get my advice and help at a lower cost. So the Launchpad, which is a longer, more in-depth program, that is at that 997 price point, and you'll save $100 if you buy them both. But again, you can't buy it right now. So don't worry about it. Just be thinking about it and looking for it coming in July. So, because this is an official episode, we are going to do a quick prayer and then we're going to get into the story behind where I was as a clinic in Shockwave. And I do think it's really important because a lot of you are probably there and you don't even realize it. So I do want you to listen. Dear God, thank you so much for the opportunity to continue to reinvent ourselves, not just in our clinic, but on this earth. Um, One of my favorite things is if you think you know me from 3 years ago, you don't know me because I'm such a growth minded person. And I know that our listeners are as well. If you're attracted to this podcast, you love the idea of continually growing as a human, as a spouse, as a parent, as a friend. These are the conversations that we have. Like, if I had to say one thing that connects everything, is that we are here to grow. And the idea of reinventing your clinic, because you've been in it for a while, is okay. There's a lot of weird um, stigmas around within chiropractic around bringing on a modality or a pain related thing. And I'm not going to pray for Shockwave. God, if that's where you think I'm going with this, I'm not. Um, I just pray that every single person listening can authentically have an opportunity to check in with themselves and feel really good about the practice that they are continuing to grow and what the care that they are providing for their patients, and just give them a hug, a little warm white light hug to let them know that you see them, and grant them permission if they feel they need it to ask some of these questions, um, to themselves about their clinic, or talk to their CAs and start to reinvent themselves in a different way if that's what they so choose. In your name we pray. Okay. So before we get into my conversation with Dr. Dan, I want to give you a little background on where we were at as a clinic and why I even considered Shockwave. So you're going to hear from Dr. Dan. Shockwave is like the umbrella term. Okay. So you've probably heard of Softwave. They're really good at marketing. They're kind of like the Kleenex of facial tissue. So a lot of people will ask, like, Shockwave or Softwave? Well, Softwave is a brand of Shockwave. Okay. So Shockwave is like saying ultrasound or something like that. So I started looking into Shockwave because there's kind of really like two scenarios that were happening. One, our OVA sucked really bad. We are a high volume clinic, meaning our appointments are 90 seconds to 5 minutes at most. And really, we had just kind of gone down this route in 2020 and 2021 of seeing if we got so damn affordable, would we never lose a patient again? Would our retention just go through the roof? It didn't, just in case you wanted to know. It was a race to the bottom and people didn't value it at all. So we kind of started correcting. We were just not as profitable, even remotely, as we should be, like at all, like 10%, which is not okay. And so we needed to start making changes. So we started those changes in 2021. We started looking at expenses, seeing how we could reduce expenses. But okay, so basically, if you find yourself in a clinic where you're like, I'm gonna oversimplify this for us. Okay. So if you like have a degree, like an MBA, and you're like, oh, I don't like the way you're describing this, well, find a different podcast to listen to. I'm sorry. But like my aha was like, okay, you want to run a profitable clinic, correct? Everybody shake your head. Yeah, I want a profitable clinic. There are kind of two ways to do that. Option one, reduce your expenses, reduce your payroll, reduce your overhead. Don't reduce your payroll. You are probably not paying yourself enough. Like, reduce expenses. That's option one. Option two is increase revenue without increasing expenses. Okay. So, like, if you see 75 more people a week, but you need to hire an associate to do that, you didn't necessarily, because you simultaneously increased revenue with patients, but also increased expenses. So you might have become slightly more profitable depending on your pay structure and things like that, but like not really. So to become more profitable, you must increase revenue without increasing expenses. And that's a very important part for you to remember as you listen to this conversation. Just keep that or reduce expenses. So we had increased our price per adjustment. We made changes there. Okay. And I still just wanted to increase revenue. So what I found was that up until now, being a very, very straight chiropractor, we would maybe do electric muscle stim on like 3 people a week. Maybe we would charge $10 for it, maybe not. Didn't really matter. Wasn't going to pay my bills with $30 a week. And so, where we were at as far as our clinic is we had increased our prices to the point like they're not where they should be per the adjustment, but like we had like started to rectify that. But we still wanted to bring in more revenue. We wanted to get that OVA, that office visit average higher because I wasn't comfortable with the profit margin that it was. The OVA wasn't as high as I wanted above our cost per adjustment. So cost per adjustment, total expenses over a time period divided by number of patients. Okay. Office visit average, total income divided by number of patients. So basically, you want those numbers to be as far apart as possible. Cost per adjustment is $25. Office visit average, like basically the amount you're getting, $45. Great. You have a $20 profit margin there. Make sense? Okay. So I wanted to increase that OVA. And so we started looking at other therapies. The other issue that we had is I realized we were kind of disappointing our patients by not doing more than the adjustment. So, like, we would have wellness patients and they would be like, what do you know about elbows? And if you know me, you know I don't care about elbows at all. And so I'd be like, little adjustment, activator. If that didn't fix it, let me know and we can refer you to a physical therapist. We were in our world of like staying as a straight chiropractic clinic, we were referring out to physical therapy often, like 2 times a month, maybe. Like, I know it's not like incredibly often, but like, and that was just what kind of worked for us. And so it was like, all right, we are leaving money on the table. And I do think our patients would be happier if instead of because no offense, if you're a physical therapist listening, no offense, but like physical therapy, like it can be expensive. It can be covered by insurance. It can be time consuming and it takes work, right? Physical therapy is like exercise. So it takes a while. So it wasn't like our patients were like, oh, yes, I love that you're sending me to physical therapy. So I was like, okay, what could we bring in that potentially would like fix this in between where like I can charge you for something which will increase my revenue and it will fix something that you care about and will happily give me money and you'll be happy. This was important to me. You will be so happy to give me that money because it was short and fixed and like air quotes, quick and easy. The other thing is I'm getting old, and so was my associate. So my associate was dealing with like some bicep tendonitis and like some disc stuff. I had like this toe thing that was keeping me from running. Kirby was getting hurt, and so it was kind of like, damn, it'd be kind of nice to have something in our clinic for us. Like literally, if it was just to keep me up and adjusting, that would be great. So that was our situation. And that's kind of where we started to entertain the idea of like, okay, I'm going to start flirting with some ideas. So we ran the cost of like a sauna, a hydro massage table, infrared, laser, and shockwave. Those were kind of like the main things. I did not want here, okay. I did not want to have to increase my overhead. So by that, I mean I didn't want to have to hire an additional CA. So doing something that was like very time intensive. Oh, especially not doctor. Like, no, 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 I'm not doing this. And I didn't want to have to hire an additional CA. So I needed it to be kind of quick. I can't have a CA spending 20 minutes. I didn't want to have to like increase my square footage that I needed. So like I didn't want to have to do construction on my building to like add this in. So these were all the things of like, this needs to be quick, easy. I also, this is a big one. So if you're kind of not paying attention for a second, pay attention because this is where we're either going to resonate together or not. I did not want to be so in the hole on anything that I felt compelled to oversell the new therapy. So I did not want to spend 50 to $80,000 because I knew what would happen is I would feel like I needed to make money quickly because the whole point was increasing the revenue. So I didn't want to be in a situation where I was doing Shockwave Facebook ads. I didn't want that. I did not want like I did not want new patients calling my clinic and saying, "Hey, I saw your Shockwave ad. I would like Shockwave. I would like to sign up for Shockwave on my shoulder." Now, there are some clinics that are like, "Lauren, why wouldn't you want that?" Because I really didn't want to become a pain focused, extremity focused clinic. I wanted to stay nervous system. Like that's just what I wanted. And that was really, really important to me. I didn't want to be mixing the messaging. So I also didn't want to, like with new patients, I didn't want to be like selling $3,000 of chiropractic and $3,000 of shockwave because what I didn't want to happen is week 1 they're getting an adjustment or they're getting adjustments and then they get shockwave and they're like, "Hey doc, my pain is gone. I don't need any more adjustments. Thank you for the shockwave." Like, and if you're listening to that and you're like, "Don't you want them to get better?" I do, but I want them to get big picture better. Nervous system better. Not, "Thanks for fixing my shoulder pain," or, with the shockwave. Like, I wanted big picture better. And to me, shockwave was like acute. It's an acute thing. It's not like a long-term chronic thing. Like, you know where I'm going with this, right? Like, I don't need to keep defending myself. Like, it just always feels like you're offending somebody when you're talking about this scenario. So that's where we were at. I didn't want to talk to new patients about it. This was for our wellness patients who inevitably come up with a tendonitis, a torn meniscus, like they're in between. It's not surgical, but like they're uncomfortable. And like really their only options are an injection or physical therapy. Insert whatever we did. So I met with a couple people. I talked to multiple different reps. As you may know, one of them may have been kind of a jackass, cocky as hell. Yep. Okay. But also that was a really, really expensive machine. That was an $80,000 investment. And so I talked to them like, okay, what do you got that like, and I asked them, why are you 80,000 when these others are 10, 20, 50, 30? Cause that was kind of where it was. It was like, I was finding a lot that were like like 17, 20, 30, 50, 80. And I was like, "Okay, why are you 80?" And like the answer I got was okay. Like it was okay, but like I wasn't turned off to it by any means. It was just like, okay, it wasn't a shut door, but like it was on the table. I just again, I didn't want like there was a big part of me that was like if I spend 80 grand or 50 grand, not to like call out that one company, if I put this on a credit card, I I have to sell so much of it before I can actually get to my goal, which is to be bringing in revenue. And so that was a huge part of my process going into searching for different shockwaves and why I ultimately did decide who I went with. So if you're with me so far, next you're going to hear from Dr. Dan Ruitenbeek. He's a rep for Shockwave Centers of America. I'm going to tell you right now, like, I get a small affiliate. It's the same amount that if you bought one and you signed up for an affiliate link, you would get the same amount. I am not getting anything special as far as it. So, like, if you got this and you talked to another chiro in your town and they bought it, you'd get the same amount that I would for talking about it. That's not why I'm talking about it. Believe me, I have a lot of affiliate links that you guys don't even know because I don't like to. I'm truly talking about it because y'all are very curious, very, very, very curious about this process. And it does kind of go along with like my root thing of wanting to fix like helping some of these like holes that we have within chiropractic. And so one of them is like, hey, you know what? I don't like that we have all this stigma around like you can't have shockwave because you're a pediatric and prenatal chiropractor. And I'm like, I I can and I can do it ethically and like virtuously and philosophically. I can do it. Like you don't get to tell me that type of thing. So here is my Instagram live with Dr. Dan. Afterwards, if you are still on board, I'm going to talk shortly about how we implemented it into our clinic because that is something that a lot of you also are wondering. All right. So here is Dr. Dan from Shockwave Centers of America, and kind of just explaining Shockwave and their unit, why the price is the way it is, why it's so cheap. Defend yourself. Why is it so cheap? And you'll have more information about this, about understanding Shockwave after this. Without further ado, hey Dan, how's it going?
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. Just make sure that the audio is good. Just let me know that you can hear me well. Okay, perfect.
Okay, so I guess my first question is you're a practicing chiropractor?
Yeah, my wife and I have a practice in East Cobb. I'm still practicing, less hours than I used to, don't get me wrong, but I'm still implementing Shockwave, and we're kind of trying to push the limits as to what it can do and try new things, and give you guys as much update as we possibly can on what's working well in Shockwave compared to old protocols versus new ones. And so we're always trying to improve the situation and patient care as we go.
Yeah. Okay, so right out of the gate, can you just explain what is Shockwave?
Sure. Shockwave therapy is acoustic wave is the better, more apt way to name it, because we're using sound waves to penetrate tissue and stimulate the body's healing processes to do what it's supposed to do. It's a great plateau buster for chronic issues. It's great for breaking down scar tissue and stimulating healing in osteoarthritic joints. It is very simple when we think about what is actually happening when we implement a shockwave. We're rapidly changing the pressure of the tissue in the region that we're treating. And that's causing the body to go, hey, this is a new problem. We're going to go send resources like blood flow, collagen, your own body stem cell production. We get the hormone VEGF, which is a permanent solution to increasing the amount of blood flow to an area that's low blood flow in general, like your tennis elbow, plantar fasciitis patients can get permanent solutions with Shockwave, and some other, lifestyle changes, of course. It's not an all-inclusive therapy. That's why I love that we make this for chiropractic specific, because you guys are holistic in nature and you're going to treat it that way.
Got it. So I've told patients that it's like ultrasound on steroids. Should I stop saying that, or is that okay?
No, it's not a bad way to describe it. Don't get me wrong, because we are using sound waves. Absolutely. Ultrasound is deep thermal therapy. So we're creating a lot of heat in the tissue, which is great for an acute problem. We don't necessarily always use shockwave in an acute problem because there are other options. But if it's the only therapy that you have, there's a way to make it more shallow, more gentle, and it can be a really great option to inhibit some of the neurological response of a painful situation. But more often, we're going to use shockwave for an acute process. We're going to use shockwave for a chronic process, and we'll use ultrasound for an acute one.
Okay. So talk to me about the different types of shockwave. Okay, well, all right, we're not going to name names here first, but I do feel like I want to call out that Softwave is a brand like that, because I've literally had multiple people go, what's the difference? And it's like, no, okay. So Shockwave was kind of explained as like the umbrella of all of them, and then like there's different name brands.
That's correct. So shockwave therapy is the colloquial term for the therapy,
Yeah.
just like ultrasound
Right.
therapy. And then you have all these different brands that make ultrasound machines on top of that, right? So shockwave is shockwave, but there are two very distinct versions of how we implement that shockwave into the tissue.
And this is
Um,
important.
yeah,
Yeah.
so radial shockwave, which is what our machines are, is mechanotransduction. So we're using a mechanical force to create the acoustic wave into the tissue, whereas focus machines use either electromagnets or they use electrohydraulic situations. So softwave is electrohydraulic, and electromagnetic you'll find in stores or Chattanooga's focus machines as well. So focused and radial are your two branches of shockwave in general. And if you think of radial, the name radial kind of gives it away. As soon as it hits the tissue, it radiates outwards and it attacks more square footage faster than focus, which penetrates deeper and gets stronger onto one focal point much deeper into the tissue. We max out in radial shockwave at about 6 to 7 centimeters of depth, which is plenty in the human body, don't get me wrong. But focus shockwave has the capability to get up to 12 centimeters in depth into the tissue as well.
Okay. So why, when somebody's going like, okay, well, which one do I choose, radial versus focus?
Radial shockwave is still the easiest way to attack chronic musculoskeletal issues and the majority of the stuff that we're going to see in practice. There are some advantages with focus versus radial, just like there are some advantages with radial versus focus, and that's what I'm happy to go through with you today. The general improvement from the technology to get to a focused machine is we can penetrate deeper without causing any kind of effect to the more shallower tissues. And so if we're thinking about treating acoustic neuromas, treating, I was going to say ED is one of the things that focus seems to be superior at compared to radial, which is not our practice,
Not,
and to each
not
their
my
own, but
practice. That was the
no,
number
it's
one
not our
thing.
thing.
Was like, I
Um,
don't want anybody pulling out their dicks at my practice for erectile. I don't want anybody thinking that that's what we're treating here.
because the nature of focus, it's more gentle at the surface and it's stronger deeper in the tissue. So it's a little bit easier to deal with those issues. But again, not our practice. It's great in men's health
Yeah.
clinics, don't get me wrong. When it comes to tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, frozen shoulder, plantar fasciitis, we're talking about things that are close to the surface already, and we don't have to worry about getting super, super deep into the tissue. And there's some caveats to both issues as well. The focus is, because it's more powerful to create the shockwave, it's now a class 2 or class 3 device depending on the brand. And if you look at the FDA regulations for your state, you may be the only one in the practice that's allowed to use it.
And for
Because
me, that was like, I was still at this point, even with the erectile dysfunction thing, and being like, I was like open to like, okay, maybe I want focus. Do I want focus or radial? And then as soon as you said there was a chance that the doctor would have to be the one to use a focus machine, like honestly, that just was not what I was looking for in my clinic at all. And if there was ever going to be, like, even if my state currently took like that, but like change down the road, that would be a deal breaker for me because I really needed my CAs to be the one to do it.
yeah, and it's in a gray zone right now, because if you go to the trade shows and like, no, you can have your staff do it and all that kind of stuff, it's like, well, what are you registered at under the FDA rules? And it's either class 2 or class 3 depending on the machine. And sometimes we'll go and the salesperson's not allowed to use the machine on the clients that are coming through because they're not a licensed practitioner. And so it's a very careful gray zone. And it's like, you know what? And like I said to you in our conversation, it may be allowed right now, but 6 months down the road when Shockwave is more popular, and people start to keep implementing it, which is great. There's a huge surge in the therapy, which I love. Um, Regardless of the machine, I'm glad that it's here, but it's one of those things that it could shut you down, and now you're the only one who can do it, and it's going to slow your roll. It's going to get in the way of your practice
Right.
instead of being a benefit to your practice. When we look at the European and the Canadian model in Shockwave, it's a lot more well implemented in both countries. Well, European, obviously, multiple countries, because it's been around longer in their system, and there are specific, rules and regulations on who can use it and who can't. Class 1 medical devices like the radial shockwave, you're in the house, your staff can very, very easily run it for you. The training is not practitioner specific. Anybody can learn how to use it and use it well. And there's always ongoing support. So we have the Facebook group, as you know, if you have questions, you can always reach out, or your staff can reach out like, hey, I have this weird thing coming
Mhm.
in. What can I do in this situation? We don't want you to be on an island trying to figure it out yourself, and
Right.
you don't want to be interrupted during an adjustment where somebody's like, oh, what do I do with this shockwave case? No,
Right.
they can call us or get in touch with somebody else who has a machine.
So Radial, which is what yours is musculoskeletal stuff. So it's shoulders, knees, elbows,
Yeah,
wrists,
and we
kind of.
talked about this, and I'll be totally honest. I love Focus Shockwave. It's such a great therapy. Does it fit into most chiropractic offices? In my opinion, no. One, it's cost prohibitive. Two, you may not be able to use it. Your staff may not be able to use it, at least legally. It's harder to get that kind of price point from your patients as well, because it's mostly going to be a cash service, at least for the foreseeable future.
Oh
In
yeah.
order
So
to
like insurance, does any insurance reimburse for it yet?
We're getting good luck in some states in like PIP and
Okay.
PI cases, because we do have a CPT code for shockwave therapy, but a lot of insurances, major medical, will say, oh, that's experimental. It's not going to be covered. But HSA, FSA, your health shares have been great to
Yep.
us. They said, yeah, your doctor says you need it. Of course, go for it. And again, you're charging a reasonable fee. You're not charging $500-600,
Right.
an appointment where they're like, no, you can't do that.
Right. Great training. Like, so we implemented really well, tons of really good trainings and onboardings, protocols. Like we just printed the consent form. I mean, so I am just not a directions person. And so like we literally, so I knew there was a 30-day return
Yeah.
window, right? And so like when I announced on Instagram, like, okay, I'm going to do Shockwave. And I didn't say what company I was going with. I had some people, and I won't say who, but they had spent 20, 30 grand on a unit, and they were like, oh my God, be careful. Mine is basically a warm laser.
Mm.
And I was like, yeah. And so I was like, what? Okay. And your guys' price point is so low. I was like, oh God, this thing is going to be. And so we got it day one. I'm like watching the training videos while my CA is watching a different training video, setting it up. And she's had frozen shoulder for 2 years. And so like this thing came 10 minutes ago in the mail. And I'm like, I have 30 days to return this if this doesn't work. And so I remember holding it. And I'm just like, I don't think I've done enough training. And she's like, are you scared? I'm like, kinda. And she's like, well, now I'm scared. And so we went. She's like, oh, okay. And so we're doing it. It takes about 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Like that's the other thing is like, the price point for the 6 minute is like, okay, I am not exaggerating. My CA who couldn't lift her shoulder above 90 degrees had like 60% increase in range of motion from one session. She's like, has tears streaming me. And I'm like, hell yeah, we are keeping this thing. But like, still we're like, okay, was that a fluke? And so we just kind of kept, you doing the trainings, looking at the protocols, playing with it. The like tablet is really, really nice, because there are times where our clinic, I would love to say our systems are perfect. But like I'll tell a patient like, yeah, you should try Shockwave next week. And so they show up, I'm in the middle of an adjusting shift, and they're like, I have Shockwave today. And my staff is like, great. What are we doing it on? My knee. And so like the front desk is just like, which protocol? And like all I have to do is like push a button and all the settings
Yeah.
autofill. So that's been really nice. Now, when I talked on my onboarding call, you had told me all of this stuff. And so I had known at this point, I had talked to 3 or 4 other companies. And in my head, I had $80,000 as a price point for 1 or 2 different companies. 50,000 was another one for 1 or 2 companies. And then like 20 to 30,000 or 17 to 30,000 was another one. So when I asked like, okay, how much is it? Tell them how much your guys' Shockwave is.
Our top of the line one, our clinical model is $9,000 all in, and our portable model, which is the little guy behind me. Again, portable just because we needed one for track athletes and for hockey teams and all that kind of stuff. 6,500 all in.
Yeah. So to which I said, defend yourself. Like, again, reminder, this is like, I had only gotten DMs saying like, I was unimpressed with they didn't have your brand. I will say that it was not your brand. It was a $17,000 brand. And I was like, okay, nope. I was like prepared. I was not prepared for you to be this cheap. So like, Defend yourself, Dan.
And so
Why?
I have to laugh because the situation that I was in when we were having our call is I was taking my daughter to the aquarium with my wife, and it's just like, hey, this is a good time. Like, let's do it. I was like, okay, there's a little mom pod where you can do breastfeeding or whatever. And I'm sitting in the mom pod, and you came straight out with it, like, defend yourself. I'm
I
like, all right, here we
literally
go.
said that.
And I loved it. I was like, this is great. The reason is there's a few reasons. One is when Shockwave finally made its way over to the States, it came by one company, and they got to name their price, and they went after the orthopedic community. They did not market to chiros or PTs or ATs or anybody that actually sees a high volume of clients, and they don't have the same kind of budgetary restrictions, right? And so when they started, they came in at $25,000, $30,000, and they went to the orthopedic community. And fast forward 15, 20 years later, they even changed their protocols from what the new research has shown, which is one of the reasons that I think that, the $17,000 machines, they're great, but I don't know if their protocols are updated enough to see the best results either. So people may just be behind the times and they haven't updated, or they haven't helped their clinics get into new, functioning Shockwave, instead of just, hey, this is what they told me to do. That hasn't changed. But when I started my Shockwave journey as a clinician, 5 years ago, it was who the heck around me has one, because I was trained almost 18 years ago in Shockwave,
Been
because the
around that
Canadian system, like I said,
long?
it's been around 40 years. Yeah. Yeah. The European system has been implementing in like the holistic space for 30. The technology is about 40 years old. And then in Canada, about 25. We implemented a lot faster from the European system because we steal everything from the European system, including our royalty. No, I'm just kidding. But when they finally made it here, they had that kind of competitive advantage where there was no competition, and it really hindered the growth of the therapy because it wasn't affordable to me, especially a new grad at a school. And so when I met my business partner, who's medical manufacturing, distributing 25 years plus, he said, we have to just make our own. The system's broken. There's no training. You can't even find a doc within an hour and a half of here, which is Marietta, Georgia, which is Cairo heaven, that has one, and you're just going to have to figure it out. And so we got with some awesome experts on, hey, what's working, what's not working. We did a ton of digging into the research that's been done in just the last 5 years, and that's where our protocols are built, is most recent as we can, to make it easy for you guys, where you just plug and play and you press, hey, osteoarthritis of the knee, great, your staff can go run and go do it. And then when you dig into what it costs to make the machine, it was like, why the hell are they charging so much in the first place? And so we saw it as a huge gap in the market that, no, we're going to design it for the chiropractor, and for the PT that needs access to the therapy, that doesn't want to charge their clients $200 or $300 a session to get it done, and actually promote the therapy forward where people start asking for it. You want patients to be like, hey, I've been looking for Shockwave therapy and these guys have one. I want to go and I want to see it. That's our big goal.
Yeah. So like I said, I'm going to take this audio off of Instagram and pair it with just some more of my personal experience, my story with my clinic and how we implemented it. And that is going to release on the podcast, not in a couple days, but next week, next Sunday. So you can look for that if you want more information. Dan, is there anything that I didn't ask that you feel like we need to cover?
The only thing that I would just reiterate is that it's supposed to be a tool in your practice. It's not supposed to take over your practice. And the way that you've gotten so far, especially you in your practice, is you, and you don't want to change the whole feature of your practice to be, okay, now I'm the Shockwave clinic. And if you want to do that, that's fine. And that's where, great, get a focus machine, get a radial machine, have 3 or 4 rooms dedicated to it, be a Shockwave clinic, go do it. But if you love the personality of your practice and you love the clientele that you're getting, you would just like to help them avoid more injections and more surgery and all that other crud that comes along with the patients that we see, and give them another option. Again, it's 5 or 6 extra minutes that they spend in the practice. You get them some awesome opportunity to heal from stuff that they've been stuck with for months to years. And you don't have to change your whole practice to add a tool in. It's the easiest one, in my opinion, from a chiropractic standpoint, to have implemented into the practice. I mean, I'm always ready for people to, like, hey, doc, I'm struggling. Like, I can't get, people to try it. I'm like, give it away for free. Show them that it works. Do the first one for free and show them that it works. And they're always going to come back and ask for more if it's going to help them in general. So keep doing what you're doing from a chiropractic standpoint. Add this in as a tool here and there when you need to, and you'll see it grow organically that way.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I think if people comment Shockwave on this video, I think it will send them the link. I don't know. If not, it's in my link in bio. Or if you can't find it, DM me. I don't know. I will get you the link type of thing. And then they can, just answer any more specific questions that you have. But yeah, thank you so much, Dan. I really appreciate it.
Anytime.
All right.
Real pleasure, as always.
Okay, so hopefully, like you just feel educated now. Like that was kind of the goal. The goal was not to sell you on Shockwave or this machine at all. Really, just so you kind of are. We're just like we're educating. We're understanding what the heck it does. You should now kind of understand the differences between them. And these are some questions to ask yourself. Okay, if you're bringing on a Shockwave that requires a doctor to do it, okay, that's different. That's a different cost to your clinic than if you can have a CA doing it, obviously. And just like looking at your numbers and what your goals are. What are your goals for bringing this in? So I'll end this kind of by talking about how we implemented. So you know that we're 10,000 in. Now, I don't mean to like brag, but I am Costco rich. If you haven't heard me talk about Costco rich, we don't have anyways, we don't have time. So like 10 grand was not going to break my bank. Put it on the credit card, but we did have a 30-day window. And I was like, we unboxed that effer right away because I actually did have people when I was talking kind of on Instagram about like, I'm looking at Shockwave, who has one. I literally had someone tell me that they spent $17,000 on basically a warm laser and they hate it and it did nothing. And so in the back of my head, even though like whatever, Centers of America had like their thing, I was like, there is a chance that this is a worthless thing. And I'm going to return this. I will not have a $10,000 thing in my clinic collecting dust. So we unboxed it right away. Now, up until this point, when I knew I was going to be buying a Shockwave, I started talking with certain patients of like, hey, yep, we can try we can try adjusting the elbow, or we can try adjusting the shoulder this way. We give like some virtual exercises. We just like text them a YouTube video, like, hey, you can start doing the exercises. But just so you know, we are investing in something really, really cool that is gonna be coming. It's gonna be a bit because we have to learn on it. We have to make sure it actually works. But like when the time comes, I'll talk to you about if you're not getting the results yet with this elbow, shoulder, knee, head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Whether or not you'd be a good candidate, but I need to learn first. Like I really was letting them know, like, listen, I want to understand what we're getting into and I'm going to protect you and I'll see if you're a good candidate. We opened it up day one. I did it on my CA who's had a frozen shoulder for 2 years. Um, and obviously she was getting adjusted 1 to 2 times a week for sure. And in that one session, she was able to increase her range of motion like 70% after a like 6-minute session. She was literally in tears and I was like, "Oh yeah, we are keeping this thing." I was just so excited because again, I was like, I don't know, did I buy a warm laser? So I started to get excited about it. And so then what we did is we watched more of their training videos. So they have like, training videos and stuff like that. We started printing just like some protocols of like, okay, how are we going to implement this? So we printed a what are they called? Old school chiros used to do track card. No. Oh my gosh, I can't think of it. Was it a report card? No, it was like, oh, you're all yelling it at me and I can't think of it, but like school chiros would have like a patient would have like this like thicker cardboardy piece of paper that they would keep notes on and all of their notes were on that. So before EHR, this is what a lot of chiros did. And so we basically printed that where the CA would write down the settings that they did, circle the location on this like little person. If you buy one, let me know and I'll like send you basically. We had the consent on the front, and then on the back was this like just grid to like keep notes. For us, that was just easier to like have all of them in this like accordion folder to pull instead of digital, like it just was. Um, we sent out a text to all of our patients saying like, "Hey, This is a brand new way that we have in clinic. These are the types of things that it can help. Talk to the front desk or your doctor if have something that you think you'd benefit from. And then we also talked to them. We talked about the price point in that. So we started out with an intro rate of $75. Some of the more expensive units, they'll say like 125 to 150. Again, I could have charged 100. I was so hesitant. Like, real honestly, I was just so hesitant and I wanted to see the results. Like, I I mean, let's be honest, I don't even charge $60 for an adjustment. So, like, charging $100 or 125 or something, and I know the adjustment works, right? Like, so obviously I have my own complex, but I just wanted to, like, know, and I knew we could always increase the price afterwards. So I was like, all right, so we started because I wasn't 80s and in, I felt just fine charging $75 per session. And then I knew, like, after a few months, we could always, like, pre-sell. So, like, we may say, like, "Hey, heads up, Shockwave sessions are going up to $90 or $100 a piece. You can pre-buy up to 10." Like, if we wanna do that, we absolutely can. We have not done a single ad, on Facebook. We did not roll this out for any new patients. So currently you can, and this was kind of nice as we told our patients, this is a service only available to our current patients. So you cannot call off the street and say, "Hey, can I get Shockwave?" Your answer would be no. Like, eventually, might we? Sure, maybe. But like, I just didn't want to right away. Like, to me, I was just like, no, we're just going to roll this out to our family, like our little group of wellness patients. So docs were not talking about it to new patients. We were talking about chiropractic. So if it was like the only time we have now talked about it to new patients is like, let's say we have someone coming in for headaches, neck pain, but then also their knee. Like, kind of the like, oh yeah, and also my knee. And you're like, "Ugh." Even then, typically we'll do at least a month of active care, see if just balancing the pelvis takes care of the knee. And we'll say, like, hey, just so you know, this is where we're going to start. If a month in, we're not seeing the results on the knee, the shoulder, the elbow, whatever, we do have other things up our sleeve that we can. And then the patient kind of is like, oh, good, you're saving me money. You're not trying to oversell me. Or not, I shouldn't say oversell, but like, whatever. That's just what works for us. Okay. That's how we implemented. And the company also says recommended giving the first one for free. And most sessions are, or most things are going to take 6 to 12 sessions to improve on. We've been doing this 3.5, 4 months now. So we did the whole free first session. And here's can we be honest? Can we be honest with each other? We can be honest. One session gets so much improvement that it was really hard to get some people to, like, we had out of the first 10 people, 6 of them were like, "Oh, heck yeah. Like, sign me up for the next 6 weeks." And then 4, let's say like 40%, 4 of the 10, 2 of them were like, "I didn't notice anything." And you're like, "Well, t one session, like, we're treating you for, like, arthritic degenerative disc stuff. Like, no, the protocol for that is 9 to 12, but they were willing to do the one, but not like willing to mentally take the risk after like they got that free one. They didn't notice anything. So then they were like, no. And you're like, ah. And then the other half of the people who didn't got the one and they got so much improvement that they're like, good enough for me. Like, it was a frozen shoulder that got a ton of improvement from one. And he's like, thanks for the free one. And so it was like, like we found out from his wife, he came home and was like bragging at the family dinner about like how good he got. And we're like, great. Is he going to do another one? Oh, I don't know. I think he's pretty happy. And they're like, oh. So for me, we switched to a buy two, get three. So that's how we changed. That's just what we did, what worked better for us than the company recommended, where at least the person was investing. So $150, like they were getting one free, buy two, get one free. And they were getting at least 3 sessions. After 3 sessions, like if they were getting no results, which we really haven't had anybody get no results except for one person that I was like, oh, this actually might just be not a shockwave thing. And so we tried it on a different part of her body and now she's happy. But like most people within 3 are getting improvement if you chose them. Oh, here's another important thing. we were not recommending that anybody take the jump with Shockwave unless something was a 6 out of 10 aggravating to them. So what this means is we weren't going after like it wasn't again, but I could do this because I didn't need to oversell it. I wasn't so in the hole that was like, "What? You have a thumb that's a 2 out of 10? Let's Shockwave it." Like I wanted the patients to be like, "This is cool. This is amazing. I really like it." And in order for that to happen, you kind of need some wiggle room. So 6 out of 10, not a 6 out of 10 pain, but just like 6 out of 10 aggravating. So I knew within 3 visits, there was room for them to notice an improvement or not. Um, yeah. And I mean, besides like a text and us talking to docs and or talking to the patients and like having a single sign up, that's kind of all we did. What would be really great is if I had a total for you and how much we collected so far. I don't know. I think last month we did 5,000 in it. And it's just a reasonable amount. Like we're not collecting $50,000 a month, but to get $50,000 a month, you would need a different protocol. And so this is why this implementation only will work for certain price points. If you do decide that you want to invest 30, 50, $80,000 in a Shockwave unit, I'm not here to talk you out of it, but you should implement a little more aggressively than I do. Like you should not take my implementation and lay that over. I just wanted to like, I just wanted to use it as an additional therapy. I didn't want to turn into a clinic that like was hustling this all the time. So I really hope that helps. If you have additional questions after you've listened to this whole episode, feel free to reach out. I might be able to answer it, I might not. To this day, I'm very happy with it, and our patients are very, very happy. And I always say you can always buy like, if you buy something on the lower end and you're like, "Oh, we actually do use it." So, like, if you're kind of like, "I don't know if we'd actually use it," then I would recommend going on the lower end and using it and seeing if you get results. And if you find that you freaking love this thing and then, like, for whatever reason, you want to buy a more expensive one, then you can always do that later. You can always go like, "All right, cool. I did a $10,000 investment. I love it. Now I feel so good about doing a 40 or 50,000." But like, I don't know if you're loving the 10,000. Anyways, so I hope that helps. Like I said, feel free to reach out. I am not like Shockwave Center of America, like cheerleader. I do think that Shockwave was a really cool thing that I've liked. I've gotten cool results with in our patients, and our patients are happy. And that's what I'm here for, is to like help thriving family practices. Like if you're a PI clinic, I don't know, maybe you should buy 6 of these. I don't know. Like, but like I'm here for those practices that are like, no, I really want to keep it about the big idea. Um, but like I don't want to be like excommunicated or blacklisted from the Cairo community just because I'm doing something new. So all right, She Slayers, until next week. Bye.